Like you said, everything to an extent is connected, you know? And
Mhm. And like now, I go outside and I see a tree, and like I know it sees me. You know what I mean? It like feels my presence, and there actually is a communication coming back if you have the right like methodology of like the communication with plants. And like an example right now is like we're both smoking mapacho for this conversation,
uh-huh.
and it's like, okay, what is mapacho? Okay, firstly, it's like not weed, and it's a type of tobacco, but it's like a tobacco nicotina rustica that comes from the Amazon, and like we buy this from the natives down in Peru, and it's grown like permaculture style. Like they don't have pesticides and herbicides for all of these things, and then it's like cured naturally as well, right? And then when we look at like tobacco in the modern world, it's like full of chemicals. It's GMO. It's like the spirit is completely taken out of it.
Mhm.
But like mapacho, it is a bridge, like you smoke mapacho and it carries your prayers. It helps you connect to the plant spirits. It's the thing that you donate. Like if you go out and you wild harvest something, there's always a relationship there. You don't just go out and just like completely destroy a plant and strip everything off it.
Mhm.
Like it's a living being. Like you go and take what you need and you give it tobacco, like
Mhm.
it's alive, it's responding.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something that's like dramatically been lost in the way that we live our lives now. And that's also something that really drew me to ayahuasca in the beginning,
Mhm.
where I was listening to people talking about ayahuasca, and they would ask like the indigenous, like, how did you work this out? And they were like, the plants told us. And from my little atheist perspective, I was like, this doesn't make any sense,
Mhm.
And now it's
Mhm.
like, well, that's obviously the solution.
Oh, 100%. I mean, like when you look at a plant and you can, for example, coffee. It's a it's an example that I'd like to use when I'm speaking to people that don't really have much that don't have a very deep understanding of the variety of plant spirits that there are out there to connect with. Coffee is a everyone really to an extent understands coffee. You know, it's very very especially in the West. It's widely used, and I would also kind of label it as misused to an extent. But everyone has some understanding of coffee. When you sit with it, you create a brew, and there are different ways to create the brew. And every time you make a change to that brewing process, there's a difference in the outcome of the creation that's made. Sitting and drinking that brew, connecting with it. Some people have very very strong experiences with that. There's a some form of exchange, an information exchange. You know, some people will say it energizes them. Some people will say that it awakens, makes them more aware. Some people say it clears their mind. Some people say it makes them paranoid, you know? And I would suggest that in a way that one human might have differing differing effects on differing people. That same spirit, that coffee has a different effect on different people. And then you can look and say, oh, well, it's based on, you know, their body type and the chemical receptors in their brain and their gut biome and all these things. And you can do the same thing with humans. You can say, oh, this kind of personality type matches with that personality type and might create frustration, whereas these people might get along. You know, you can break those down and create material explanations for the outcomes that a meeting of two spirits create. But ultimately, it is two spirits meeting, creating a unique conversation, is how I would describe that. An interaction, uh, information being shared either way. Yeah, I kind of strayed a little bit there.
Yeah. But like, yeah, but like I think what you're getting at here is once your understanding of nature expands to what I would say is a truer reality, which you
Mhm.
can only really get through direct experience to some degree, you do begin to realize that your relationship with the plants is no different than with a person, you
Exactly.
know? And
Exactly.
like we look at tobacco, for example, and people are like, oh, if you smoke tobacco, you get lung cancer, right? And it's like, okay, like, what if we expand out and we look at our relationship to a spirit as if it was a person? Okay,
Mhm.
is the tobacco that you get like come from a good place with good energy? Was it grown in an environment that it wants to be in? Was it treated with respect throughout the process before it even got to you? And then once it gets to you, do you do you abuse it? Is it a friend? Like people are like, "Oh, I need to quit." Like this thing is bad and they have this like weird parasitic energy in this relationship,
Mhm. Mhm.
And if you like abuse a person for 50 years, at some point they're going to be like, "You need to fucking back up."
100%.
And the
100%.
plants are no different. But if you like treat it with respect and like in its sacred nature and like you make offerings and like you have a really balanced relationship with it, and that also includes you taking time away and observing your relationship with these things.
Mhm.
Like we also need perspective. The same in relationships with people. Like that's how you keep everything in good relations.
Absolutely. I mean, we need to learn. um, we need to learn about other beings. And I guess that would, you could use that to kind of define what like a good relationship is like a relationship where you understand the other being, what they like, what they don't like, how they want to be respected, how they want to be spoken to, how they want to be held, and how often they want to connect with you. All of these things are very, very important. And I really like kind of how you brought up the idea of like mistreating a person for 50 years, you know. And I you could very, very easily just call that a toxic relationship, you know. You're in relationship with someone and consistently not meeting them the way that they wish to be met. And that is not beneficial for anyone, any of the parties. No one receives some you might be like potentially like parasitizing and trying to extract from that person, but on another level, there is a part of you that is also being hurt as well from the harming of another being. And it goes the same way with mapacho. If you are over using it, you're meeting it too often, or you're using it out of habit, you're using it unconsciously, you are connecting with it to find a sense of safety or familiarity. All of these things, we can treat humans the exact same way, or food, or
Mm-hmm.
TV shows, or partying, and all of these things. Our relationship with that specific, you could use the word concept or idea, but I like to use the word spirit, the spirit of a specific entity. You know, we can learn how to interact with them in a way that they want to be interacted with, and a way that we wish to interact with them, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the relationship that we develop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something here as well about like how in the current modern world that we have access to everything, like all these medicines, all these
100%.
plants, but we have none of the people who hold the wisdom around how to use them correctly, you know, or like at least very few. So, like, as
Mm-hmm.
an example, I've lived in a house where, and to some degree, so the bigger the spirit, the bigger the consequences are for misusing it as well, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
when we're talking about what ends up as a cigarette of like these insanely processed, chemical ridden like forms of tobacco, right? Like the spirit is basically gone at that point. The thing with Mapacho is like this spirit is here. And like if you cross the spirit, like you will get feedback almost immediately. Like I've been with people who had smoked weed, you know, and then 20 minutes later smoked a mapacho, and within 10 minutes they're on all fours in the front yard puking, you know, like, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the spirit being like, you mistreated this situation, this relationship.
100%.
And then
Yeah.
like we talk about ayahuasca, and it's like the ceremony for ayahuasca is so sacred, you know. No one's taken ayahuasca and going to a music festival, and if you are, I'm sure there is some crazy feedback that you're getting very quickly around that, you know. And we talk about cannabis as well, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
where does this thing originate? Right? It doesn't originate in someone's basement in the suburbs, right? It
Mm-hmm.
actually originates in like the middle Central Asia. It's like it's a Chinese herb, you know? Like there, I'm sure there's probably someone out there who's connected to a bloodline lineage of like how to use this thing correctly and ceremonially, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
then we come to the West and everyone's just abusing it. And then what it ends up becoming is this like spirit of the temptress. You know, it's the thing that offers you everything and gives you nothing in return. You have all these great ideas, but you never act on any of it. And, you know, and like at that point, the spirit has just like captured you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I honestly, I like the idea that you mentioned, like mixing the two different spirits. It's almost like you know, you're kind of like married to one and you sleeping with another to an extent. You're like crossing them, you know. A lot of these big spirits, they can be possessive, you know. They don't really like to be shared. And this is when I say shared, they don't like to share the relationship. And these are one of the things that I notice about marijuana is it starts to kick out a lot of things from your experience, especially when you surround yourself with it, and it really, really digs itself into your life. At least speaking from my own experience of past use, I no longer, I will smoke sometimes, you know, but it's not something that I ever look for, you know, if I was ever offered potentially, but it's not. That's where my relationship is with that spirit at the moment. It used to be a lot more frequent, and there was a point where I was learning from it, and then there was a point where it was very, very clearly no longer serving me or her, and it was almost like I was forcing a connection, forcing like beating a dead horse, almost like staying in a relationship with a partner when you both know that neither of you guys want to be in that relationship anymore, and there was harm. There was a level of harm caused, you know, at least from my end. I can't speak on her behalf, but and I could see it. And there was a point where I was like, no longer, this is no longer happening. And since then, my relationship has moved. My relationship with that spirit has moved into a place which I'm far more comfortable with, you know? And yeah, same thing goes with the human people. These similar patterns is the way I would say it.
Thanks so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed the show. If you did enjoy the show, don't forget to like and subscribe below. It really helps a growing channel like this out. And click up here. It'll take you to a collection of the best this podcast has to offer.